What if I told you that the 1970s wasn't just the decade of disco and bell-bottoms, but the era when authentic occult knowledge exploded into mainstream cinema, creating films that didn't just entertain audiences, but actually initiated them into genuine spiritual mysteries? I'm about to take you deeper into the shadows than most film analysts dare to go. While other channels give you surface-level analysis about 70s nostalgia and special effects, occult cinema reveals the genuine esoteric knowledge that filmmakers embedded in their work. Just like the spiritual seekers of the 1970s discovered that ancient wisdom was hiding in plain sight, you're about to learn that this decade produced the most authentically occult films in cinema history. These are 10 occult films from the 70s that didn't just influence the decade, they changed how humanity understood the hidden spiritual dimensions of reality itself. Film number 1, The Holy Mountain. The Holy Mountain by Alejandro Jodorowsky isn't just surreal art cinema, it's the most complete visual guide to alchemical transformation ever created, taking viewers through the authentic stages of spiritual death and rebirth that medieval mystics spent lifetimes trying to achieve. The film follows the thief's journey up a sacred mountain with 7 wealthy disciples, each representing a different planetary sphere from Hermetic cosmology. But this isn't just symbolic. Jodorowsky studied real alchemical texts and tarot systems to create a movie that functions as an actual initiation experience. The opening sequence, where the thief is crucified and resurrected, demonstrates what alchemists called nigredo, the black phase where the old self must die before spiritual transformation can begin. The flies covering his body represent the corruption that must be purged from consciousness. Jodorowsky uses authentic tarot symbolism throughout, with each character embodying specific archetypes from the major arcana. The Fool's journey becomes a visual map of consciousness ascending through different levels of spiritual awareness. The sacred geometry in the set designs isn't just artistic choice, it's based on mathematical principles that mystics believed could induce altered states of consciousness in viewers. The most profound aspect is the ending, where Jodorowsky breaks the fourth wall and reveals the film crew, showing that the real spiritual journey isn't reaching some distant mountain, but recognizing the divine nature of ordinary reality. Film number 2, Simon, King of the Witches. Simon, King of the Witches presents the most authentic depiction of ceremonial magic practices ever captured on film, showing a real practitioner using genuine ritual tools and techniques in the urban underground of Los Angeles. Simon lives in the storm drains beneath the city, creating a magical temple space complete with candles, pentacles, ritual daggers, and authentic ceremonial implements. This isn't Hollywood magic, these are the actual tools described in grimoires like the Key of Solomon and the Lemegeton. The film shows Simon performing what appears to be genuine ritual work, casting circles, invoking spiritual forces, and using sympathetic magic to influence events in the world above. His practices match historical accounts of ceremonial magicians who worked in hidden spaces away from society's judgment. But here's what's really incredible. Simon represents the archetype of the urban witch, the practitioner who adapts ancient magical traditions to modern city life. His underground lair symbolizes how occult knowledge survives by going beneath the surface of mainstream culture. The way Simon uses his magic for both healing and revenge demonstrates the dual nature of occult power. It can be used for beneficial or harmful purposes depending on the practitioner's intentions and moral development. His role as social outsider reflects the historical reality of magical practitioners who existed on the margins of society, serving as healers and advisors while being feared and misunderstood by the mainstream population. The film's portrayal of magic as requiring genuine study, discipline, and moral responsibility contrasts sharply with later Hollywood depictions that treat occult power as either purely evil or easily accessible. The most profound teaching is that Simon's real power comes not from his magical techniques, but from his understanding of human psychology and his willingness to live according to his authentic nature rather than social expectations. Film number 3, The Wicker Man. The Wicker Man presents a great depiction of Celtic pagan practices, showing how ancient fertility religions operated as complete spiritual and social systems, rather than just primitive superstitions. The film's May Day celebration on Summer Isle demonstrates authentic seasonal rituals that were practiced throughout Celtic Europe for thousands of years. The maypole dancing, fertility ceremonies, and harvest celebrations aren't Hollywood inventions, they're based on documented historical practices. Sergeant Howie's journey from Christian certainty to pagan sacrifice follows the classic pattern of spiritual initiation, where the seeker must abandon their old beliefs and surrender to forces beyond their understanding. But here's what's really profound. The film shows that the pagan community isn't evil, but operating according to a different spiritual logic that prioritizes the continuation of life and fertility over individual survival. The Wicker Man sacrifice itself represents what anthropologists call sacred kingship. the ritual killing of a divine representative to ensure the renewal of natural cycles and community prosperity. The way the islanders integrate sexuality, spirituality, and agricultural cycles demonstrates how ancient pagan religions understood the interconnection between human consciousness, natural forces, and cosmic rhythms. Lord Summer Isle's explanation of how Christianity displaced the old religion reveals the historical process by which indigenous spiritual traditions were suppressed and demonized by organized religious institutions. The most incredible aspect is that the film presents paganism not as backward primitivism, but as a sophisticated spiritual system that maintained harmony between human communities and natural forces for millennia before being destroyed by monotheistic religions. Film number 4, Suspiria. Dario Argento's Suspiria transforms the Italian giallo genre into a modern mystery school initiation, using the Tanz Dance Academy as a cover for authentic witch practices and the transmission of ancient feminine wisdom. The film's use of Technicolor creates what occultists call color magic, specific hues that affect consciousness and induce altered states of awareness. The saturated reds, blues, and yellows aren't just atmospheric. They're designed to overwhelm the viewer's nervous system and create receptivity to supernatural experiences. Susie Banion's journey through the academy follows the classical initiation pattern: arrival at the threshold, testing and trials, revelation of hidden knowledge, and final confrontation with the source of power. But here's what's really incredible. The Three Mothers mythology that governs the film comes from Thomas de Quincey's actual occult writings about supernatural entities that rule over different aspects of human suffering and transformation. The Dance Academy itself represents what esoteric traditions call a school of mysteries, an institution that appears to teach ordinary skills but actually transmits spiritual knowledge and develops psychic abilities in selected students. Helena Marcos, the witch leader, embodies the archetype of the Dark Mother, the aspect of feminine divinity that destroys old forms so new life can emerge. Her role isn't evil, but necessary for spiritual evolution. The way the witches move through hidden passages and secret rooms demonstrates how occult knowledge is transmitted through concealed networks that exist parallel to mainstream institutions. The most profound aspect is that Susie's survival depends not on rejecting the occult forces, but on understanding and integrating them, showing that spiritual development requires embracing rather than fighting the shadow aspects of consciousness. Film number 5, Don't Look Now. Nicholas Roeg's Don't Look Now demonstrates how traumatic loss can shatter the barriers between ordinary consciousness and psychic perception, opening doorways to spiritual dimensions that most people never access. John Baxter's precognitive visions after his daughter's drowning show how grief can activate what mystics call the inner eye, the spiritual faculty that perceives events across time and space. The Venice setting serves as what occultists call a liminal space, a location where the boundaries between different dimensions of reality become permeable, allowing supernatural experiences to occur more easily. But here's what's really incredible. John's psychic abilities aren't presented as a gift, but as a burden that comes with the territory of spiritual awakening. He sees the future but cannot change it, demonstrating the tragic aspect of expanded consciousness. The red coat symbolism that connects his daughter to the dwarf represents what Jung called synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that reveal the hidden patterns connecting all events across time and space. The way John's rational mind struggles to accept his psychic experiences reflects the modern Western difficulty with integrating spiritual phenomena into materialist worldviews. Laura's encounter with the psychic sisters shows how some people naturally possess the spiritual sight that others must develop through crisis and suffering. The most profound teaching is that psychic abilities often emerge not as supernatural gifts, but as natural responses to extreme emotional states that break down the psychological barriers that normally limit perception. Film number 6, Carrie. Brian De Palma's Carrie presents telekinetic power not as science fiction, but as the natural result of spiritual awakening that occurs when consciousness is no longer constrained by social conditioning and religious repression. Carrie's powers manifesting at the onset of menstruation connects to ancient traditions that recognize the sacred nature of feminine biological cycles and their connection to psychic development. Margaret White's religious fundamentalism represents the patriarchal suppression of natural spiritual abilities, particularly those associated with feminine power and sexuality. But here's what's really profound. Carrie's telekinesis operates according to authentic principles from psychic research. Her abilities are triggered by emotional states, affect physical objects through focused intention, and demonstrate the mind's capacity to influence matter. The Prom Night Massacre shows how psychic power without proper spiritual training and emotional balance becomes destructive rather than healing. Carrie's abilities serve revenge rather than service, The way other students' cruelty triggers Carrie's powers demonstrates how social rejection and psychological trauma can either suppress spiritual abilities or cause them to manifest in harmful ways. Sue Snell's survival and her psychic connection to Carrie at the end suggests that witnessing authentic spiritual power can awaken similar abilities in others. The most incredible aspect is that the film presents telekinesis not as fantasy, but as a natural human capacity that emerges when consciousness transcends the limitations imposed by fear, shame, and social conformity. Film number 7, The Omen. Richard Donner's The Omen brings biblical prophecy into modern settings, showing how ancient apocalyptic visions continue to influence contemporary events and consciousness. Damien's 666 birthmark connects to the Book of Revelation's prophecies about the Antichrist, but the film presents these not as distant future events, but as spiritual realities that manifest through human institutions and relationships. The mysterious deaths surrounding Damien demonstrate what occultists call psychic attack, the ability of malevolent consciousness to influence physical events and cause harm to those who oppose its agenda. But here's what's really incredible. The film shows how evil operates not through obvious supernatural manifestations, but through the corruption of normal social structures like politics, religion, and family relationships. Robert Thorne's gradual discovery of his son's true nature follows the pattern of spiritual awakening, where consciousness must accept increasingly disturbing truths about the nature of reality. The way the Antichrist appears as an innocent child demonstrates the occult teaching that the most dangerous spiritual forces often disguise themselves as benevolent or harmless. Father Brennan's warnings and eventual death show how authentic spiritual knowledge is often rejected by those who most need to hear it, and how speaking truth about hidden evil can be literally dangerous. The most profound aspect is that the film suggests the Antichrist isn't a single individual, but a principle of consciousness that manifests whenever human institutions become completely corrupted by the pursuit of power over spiritual values. Film number 8, Race with the Devil. Jack Starrett's Race with the Devil exposed mainstream audiences to the reality of organized satanic practices in rural America, predicting the satanic panic that would dominate the 1980s. The film's opening ritual sacrifice scene shows authentic elements of ceremonial magic, robed figures, ritual altar, invocations, and blood sacrifice, demonstrating that the filmmakers researched actual occult practices. The way the satanic cult infiltrates an entire Texas community reveals how occult networks can operate within seemingly normal social structures, using ordinary institutions as cover for hidden activities. But here's what's really disturbing. The couple's inability to escape the cult's influence shows how organized occult groups can use both supernatural and mundane methods to control and eliminate threats. The paranoia and chase elements demonstrate the psychological reality of being targeted by groups that operate outside normal legal and social constraints. The way local authorities are revealed to be cult members shows how occult influence can penetrate law enforcement and government institutions, making conventional protection unavailable. The film's rural setting challenges urban assumptions about where occult activity occurs, showing that satanic practices can flourish in isolated communities away from mainstream oversight. The most chilling aspect is the ending's suggestion that the cult's influence is so pervasive that escape may be impossible, reflecting genuine concerns about the reach and power of organized occult networks. Film number 9, Messiah of Evil. Willard Huyck and Gloria Katz's Messiah of Evil presents cosmic horror in the Lovecraftian tradition, showing how contact with otherworldly entities can transform entire communities into extensions of alien consciousness. The film's coastal California setting serves as a threshold between the known world and the cosmic forces that exist beyond human understanding, with the ocean representing the vast unknown that contains incomprehensible intelligences. Arletty's father's paintings function as what occultists call magical windows, artistic creations that serve as portals between dimensions, allowing otherworldly entities to influence physical reality. But here's what's really incredible. The collective possession that affects Point Dune's residents demonstrates how consciousness can be hijacked by forces that operate according to completely non-human logic and values. The Blood Moon cult represents what Gnostic texts describe as archonic influence, the way that alien intelligences can take over human communities and use them as extensions of their own agenda. The way normal people transform into predatory beings shows how contact with cosmic forces can strip away human identity and moral constraints, revealing the fragile nature of individual consciousness. The film's dreamlike atmosphere and non-linear narrative structure mirror the disorienting effects of encountering realities that exist outside normal space-time limitations. The most profound horror is the suggestion that human consciousness itself may be vulnerable to invasion and transformation by intelligences so alien that contact with them destroys everything we consider essentially human. Film number 10, The Sentinel. Michael Winner's The Sentinel presents the ultimate cosmic battle between good and evil, showing how ordinary locations can serve as battlegrounds in the ongoing war between divine and demonic forces. The Brooklyn Heights apartment building functions as what occultists call a dimensional gateway, a location where the barriers between different planes of existence are thin enough to allow passage between worlds. Allison Parker's role as the new Sentinel demonstrates the spiritual principle that certain individuals are chosen to serve as guardians of cosmic boundaries, protecting ordinary reality from forces that would destroy it. But here's what's really incredible. The Catholic Church's secret knowledge of the gateway shows how religious institutions have always been aware of supernatural realities that they keep hidden from ordinary believers. The demonic entities that attempt to break through from hell represent what Gnostic texts call qliphothic forces, destructive spiritual energies that seek to corrupt and consume all forms of life and consciousness. The way Allison's mental breakdown parallels her spiritual awakening demonstrates how contact with ultimate spiritual realities can appear as madness to those operating within normal consciousness. The film's urban setting shows how cosmic spiritual battles continue to rage in modern environments, with ordinary apartment buildings serving as fortresses in the ongoing war between light and darkness. The most profound aspect is that Allison's acceptance of her role as Sentinel represents the ultimate spiritual sacrifice, giving up personal desires and normal life to serve the protection of all existence from forces that would destroy the very possibility of consciousness and love. This wasn't just a decade of great horror movies, it was an era when filmmakers gained access to genuine esoteric knowledge and had the courage to embed authentic spiritual teachings in mainstream entertainment. These 10 films didn't just influence the decade, they changed how humanity understood the hidden spiritual dimensions of reality. They showed that ancient wisdom traditions weren't just historical curiosities but living systems of knowledge that could provide guidance for navigating the spiritual challenges of modern life. The 1970s spiritual revolution that produced these films emerged from the recognition that materialist science and organized religion had failed to address the deepest questions of human existence. Filmmakers turned to occult traditions because they offered more complete maps of consciousness and reality. Most importantly, these films demonstrated that authentic spiritual knowledge could be transmitted through popular culture, reaching millions of people who would never have encountered these teachings through traditional religious or academic channels. This is why these movies continue to influence filmmakers, spiritual seekers, and anyone who senses that reality contains dimensions that mainstream culture refuses to acknowledge. They serve as initiations into ways of seeing and being that can transform ordinary consciousness into something capable of perceiving and working with the hidden forces that shape all existence. If this video opened your mind to new possibilities about the spiritual dimensions of cinema and the authentic occult knowledge embedded in 1970s films, or just gave you some new recommendations to watch, then please subscribe to the channel. The ancient wisdom never disappeared. It just learned to hide itself in the stories we tell for entertainment. And the most incredible part? The spiritual knowledge you need for your own development might be waiting for you in the very films that challenge everything you believe about the nature of reality and human potential. Thanks for watching.